welcome to the Alpine Valley School podcast. I'm your host, Missa Gallivan, a former AVS student, a graduate, and a current staff member at the school. Today we are talking about proving yourself. Most of us have, at one point or other, felt a desire to test our mettle, whether with athletic prowess, mental acuity, or some other test of fortitude. Unsurprisingly, Alpine Valley School students feel a similar drive. Many use the resources at school to measure themselves, pushing harder through their chosen vocation, but others take another path entirely. Let me digress for a moment before I return to the point. I often conduct tours here at AVS, meeting with interested parties and talking them through our style of education, and I conducted one such interview a few weeks ago that, to be honest, threw me off my game. I met with a woman who had been teaching in public education for 25 years and was quite surprised about how we do things here at AVS. Understandably. I told her that students can and do spend all day playing Minecraft, and her reply was, "You pretend to model yourselves after the real world, but that is nothing like the real world." I was surprised by her comment, but after some reflection, I realized that she was wrong. That is exactly how the real world works, and here's why. It all comes down to choice. I, as a 33-year-old supposed adult, can choose to get up in the morning and cook myself a healthy breakfast. Or I can choose to lay in bed and eat Oreos straight out of the package. I can choose to play Minecraft on my computer all day, or I can choose to go to work. I, like the students at AVS, have a choice. And more often than not, I choose to keep up with my responsibilities, which is usually what the students do too. They may have considerably fewer responsibilities than I do, but the choice is theirs regardless, and it's up to them to account for how they've spent their time when they reach adulthood. It's up to them to be satisfied with the results. Too often, we assume that the real world for children is a classroom, where every moment of their lives is dictated by an adult. They are told when to eat, when to talk, when to sit, when to stand, and even when to use the restroom. To me, there is nothing real about that. And yet generations of students at alternative schools like ours have found themselves anxious that they will not be able to compete in the real world, the adult world, without having been exposed to traditional schooling. When Brandon Murphy, an AVS alum and my guest this week, was 15, he questioned whether or not he could succeed as an adult without some public schooling under his belt. So he left Alpine Valley School, after having been a student here for close to 10 years, and signed up at the local high school. He wanted to prove himself, and he did. I'll let him tell you the story. Hi, Brandon. Thanks for being on the show.
Hi, Missa. Thanks for having me.
So would you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your history with Alpine Valley School?
Yeah, so I'm Brandon Murphy. Came to Alpine Valley when I was about 7 going on 8 years old. Went there for 10 years and graduated in 2015 and had 1 year off in a public schooling system.
And what year was that? Do you remember?
2014.
Okay. So the year before you graduated?
Yep, the year before I graduated.
Gotcha. Cool. So you said you were about 7 or 8 when you started at AVS?
Yes, 7 or 8 years old. I just left, 3rd grade, going on to 4th grade. Yeah.
And were you in just a traditional public school before that?
Yep, very traditional, publicly funded school in Arvada. Had a kind of a rough go at 3rd grade. I loved second grade. Second grade was the best. Loved my teacher. And then in 3rd grade, I decided that I didn't like reading anymore and that I didn't like school all that much anymore. So my parents thought that was not right and started looking for alternative schools. And my dad had found a Sudbury school in California and was like, "Let's move to California." And I was like, "Okay." And my mom's like, "All right." And then but weeks before planning to move to California, we discovered Alpine Valley. And back then we had a visiting week, so I got to do my visiting week, fell in love, and the rest was history.
Great. What do you remember about, after you were enrolled, your daily life at school, the sort of things you did?
I remember a pretty huge culture shock. I went from a structured system to being able to control my own structure. And that kind of confused me for a while. And then all the people and older kids everywhere and all mingling really threw me through a loop. But then it was Larry taught me how to play pool. And then once I learned how to play pool, I got to find my little clique of people at school and learn to socialize that way.
That's good.
Yeah. It was a healthy start.
What about as you got older? What sort of things did you do when you were a little older?
So I would say I graduated from pool to backgammon.
Oh.
Yeah, backgammon is legendary in the Alpine Valley community.
Pretty traditional progression.
Yeah. And also under Larry's wing on that one. Don't know if I've ever beaten him yet. And then from there, we would have huge board games around the main room table. So I'd get involved in like the round table discussions that way. And then that, as I got a little more comfortable, we started playing games outside. So like capture the flag and every single kind of tag you could ever think of or imagine or create. And the asteroid game, which I'm sure some listeners have heard of before. I remember Jesse talked about it in the podcast. Yeah, a lot of social structured games all the time.
That's interesting. So speaking of being social, like what did you feel like were your relationships with the other students? Was it easy to make friends? Did you struggle? Was it a little of both?
It was easy to make friends for me because I've been told that since I was a little kid, that was my superpower. I could make friends with anybody. I'd go to the park and make friends with old people sitting on a bench. So not every kid has that experience, but I found friends right away, and it was pretty easy to do because I was in an environment where I could talk to anyone anytime I wanted. Mm-hmm. So all I had to do was go up and say hi and have the courage to do that, and then the rest was history. I was friends with all of my people. I think it only took me 2 weeks till I met Ellie and Christy, and we became this little trio of friends for now, like 10 years later. But yeah, it wasn't that hard at all.
That's great. What was it like being around people with, a bunch of different ages and backgrounds, and, there were adults, but there were also little kids? Like, what was that like for you?
It was liberating, I think, because I wasn't used to being able to talk to adults all the time as much as I love to. I always thought that the older kids were more fun, and I always thought that grown-ups were more interesting than the people that were my age. So being in a community where, oh man, look at all these older kids that I can go learn from and pick on and have fun with, and it was just like a dream come true in that aspect, and all of these grown-ups that I could go hang around and be the monkey on their shoulder for a little while. It was great. It was fantastic. I think some of the older kids were kind of intimidating, though. The grumpier teenagers I may have stayed away from and found my happy crowd.
Yeah. It's pretty sensible anyway.
Yeah.
Do you think that you benefited by being around so many different kinds of people?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the most constructive criticism I've ever gotten in my life would be in arguments around the main room table with older kids and younger kids, or being in the judicial committee and hearing from, a kid that's younger than me and a kid that's older than me and a grown up all at the same time, what I need to do to correct myself, or any suggestions they have for what I could do to better myself in any way was kind of a shocker for sure for a while. But it was probably the best form of constructive criticism that I think anyone could ever receive.
Yeah. It sounds like you took it to heart.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. For a while, it was kind of crazy. I was definitely, as I think most kids are when they first go to Alpine Valley, deathly afraid of the judicial system.
And how did that end up working out for you?
Well, not so great, but I mean, I learned to break rules when I needed to learn something.
Okay, yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, I definitely had priors, as we call it, in the judicial system, and I learned to conquer that by serving on the judicial committee and then being JC chair for like 6 years or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I was in
That's quite a tenure.
Yeah.
Wow. What were some of the things that you struggled with at AVS? What did you find challenging?
So if I couldn't socialize and I became bored, which is a lot of people talk about boredom, that was probably my biggest struggle. I hated being bored. But I think, that's how we created different games to come up with. Like, if we were sick of playing all the games we're doing and no one had any interest in any classes or any discussions, we would come up with something to do, and we started playing. I think it was only like 4 years before I left, we realized that our stage was the perfect platform for Foursquare. Yeah.
Were you the first one to play Foursquare on the stage?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. That's such an institution now.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. There was like
That's
tape
awesome.
on the stage before we got it refinished for years, indicating this is the Foursquare court.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was Colton, Ellie, and I's masterpiece. I think Brett was involved in that too. Yeah. Right before he graduated, we were the Foursquare crowd.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we took it very seriously.
I believe that.
It was crazy. We would have, when we first started playing, we would have, I mean, not everyone knows what the structure of the stage is like, but we would have a line from the curtains all the way around off the stage to people who wants to like hop in and play Foursquare. So it was a very competitive, serious sport.
Yeah. It still is in many ways.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So tell me about, you mentioned that you left AVS to go to a more traditional school for a year. Tell me about what that was like. So what prompted you to leave in the first place? So
when I got closer and closer to realizing I need to graduate, I'm getting to the point where I feel like I need to move on and find my place in the world. I realized, okay, college might be an opportunity there. If I want to go to college, I mean, how do I know that I'll succeed? And it was something I struggled with for a while. So Larry and all the other people would tell me like, oh, you got this, and alumni and everyone's like, no, you'll be fine. But it was something I had to test for myself. So I decided to put myself in an actual traditional classroom setting. And then about 5 months into it, I was like, oh, okay, I got this. And I was already ready to come back. But I figured I'd finish up the year, see how far I could go. And it was a great experience. I mean, the first month was humbling because it was like a lot to take in all at the same time. But then it kind of became very repetitive. And I was like, wait, so how have the kids there been learning this for, I mean, high school 4 years, but the better part of at least, 15 years of their life has been hardcore curriculum, but it's all just the same stuff over and over and over again. Like, I have first grade, second grade, third grade, and then my junior year of high school. That's my public education.
Smattering.
Yeah. But that's all of my background. And yet when I talk to people that are my age that just graduated high school, and my friends that graduated from that school when I graduated, I mean, the knowledge base is not that different. Mm-hmm. All it took was 1 year of high school biology and math and like the literature courses and any other things I was interested in, and I was caught up. Like, no one remembers 15 years of biology or anything they learned in middle school for that matter.
I don't remember any. I went all the way through 8th grade, and I could tell you states' capitals maybe.
Yeah.
About it.
No, I mean, it's I was talking to someone recently, and I was like, how much do you remember from like the functions of the cell? And then either of us, all we could remember was like the word mitochondria.
Like, so, I don't know, something else in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's small, I think.
Right. It's inside of me.
Yeah. I'm made up of them.
Yeah.
Kind of. Well,
so how was it academically though when you started? Did you feel like you didn't know what you were doing at all, or you like knew some of it and you had to learn other stuff?
At first I was like, okay, yeah, I'm way behind. Mm-hmm. That was my initial reaction. I was like, oh gosh, I'm so far behind. And then I realized, I think it was one of their he was their science teacher and one of their math teachers. His name was Kurt. He was an awesome guy. And he just told me, like, he's like, look, you sit in front of the class. You're the only person that talks to me. You're very attentive. And you ask me a lot of questions, you'll be fine. So anytime I forget something, he's like, you're fine. You ask enough questions, you're going to catch up. And there was a lot to do to catch up, right? I mean, I couldn't just go in there and be like, oh yeah, I know, how the Big Bang Theory works from inception to end.
Right.
But I took a little time. I mean, I'd stay there till like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, I need to learn, and the teachers were there. That guy was there.
When everybody else was like running out the door, I imagine.
Yeah. It was a ghost. Yeah, definitely like an empty house to say the least. But I got to pick the teachers' brains and learn what I needed to learn. And then I think I stopped doing that like maybe 5 months into it. I was like, okay, I'm done. I know now.
Right. So you proved to yourself what you wanted to prove.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which was essentially that you were capable of being in a classroom and learning what you needed to learn, right?
Right. And more importantly, I'm capable of doing it, which helped me realize later on that college right after high school was not for me. It was like, what I realized it in the classroom setting is that I need something that makes me feel like I'm going towards an actual attainable goal. And for college, I have no diploma that I can think of that would put me in a situation that I'm in the career that I want. And then I would evaluate like the finance of college. College is extremely expensive. No one wants to pay for my college, so that would be on me. So I figured I'd give it a couple of years. I'd take a year off, see if I could find something that was worth exploring, and I did. So I haven't looked back yet.
Cool. So what prompted you after that experience to come back to AVS then? Because presumably you could have just kept going, right, and gotten your high school diploma, and that would have been that. But you ended up coming back. So tell me what that was like. So
I had talked to my parents about it, and I talked to some staff members, and I felt like a high school diploma meant less to me in the public sense than a diploma at AVS would. Because there are very few people that get to go through the process that we get to go through. And I had already invested 10 years of my life at AVS. I really wanted to see it through and go through that rite of passage and get my diploma that truly represented who I am.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, having spent so much time at the school, if you were to talk to a family that had just started at school, like if someone who just enrolled their kids, how would you explain the benefits of AVS to them?
So, in my experience, when you're put in a situation where you're a part of the community in a functioning sense, like you are a part of the community and how it runs, you're just as important as your peers next to you, being the staff members, teenagers, kids that are younger than you. And then you're in a situation where you can be as social as you want, antisocial as you want. You're in complete control. I think you get a massive head start at finding yourself. Like, I mean, I listen all the time to all these people. I listen to a lot of podcasts, so it's great to be on one. And they always say, like, you are your in an adult life, you are still your 16-year-old self, but in a grown-up body. And that resonates so much with me. And that makes me feel so grateful that my 16-year-old self was in a situation where I was confident. I was a leader in the community in JC. I had developed all of these social skills that I still use today. And I'm proud to be that 16-year-old kid. Whereas some people struggle the most when they're 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad I cut my hair and that I wear grown-up clothes. But yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So the emphasis is really on the personal responsibility for you, like getting to practice that from a really young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Cool. So how has what you did at AVS and what you learned here translated into your adult life?
So now being a grown-up and adulting, as they say, I just, like I mentioned before, I discovered I have this superpower to make friends. And Aaron Cure is currently the vice president of the assembly and founder of FOAVs. He recognized that before I did, and told the other partners of his company that he'd like to give me a shot and give me at least an interview. So I went to interview with 3 other partners, and I got to kind of prove my making friends social skills to them for an hour, and they managed to be kind enough to give me a job and let me prove myself. So I got to use all of my social skills and communication skills, most importantly in Alpine Valley, in kind of this sales grown-up world with lots of emails and calls and networking, and I get to travel a lot, which is like the best thing for me. Stick me in a room full of 50 people and I am like in heaven. I just get to go talk to like as many people as I possibly can and make them all like me.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
How long have you been doing that?
About 6 months, going on 7 months.
And you're enjoying it?
Oh yeah, I am so in love with what I get to do every day. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I think that's really what most parents want for their kids.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you have a job, you do what you like, you're happy.
Right.
You know, the end, you did it.
Yeah. You know, they just get confused because then they're like, well, I mean, I want you to have a job, but you got to go to college and you got to suffer through all of it.
And how often do you worry about the Big Bang?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, probably never.
Only like twice a week.
Oh,
so.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, and we have Google for that now because we're adults and we get to use computers.
Yep. Still use Google every day and my calculator.
Yes. Yep. Thank goodness.
Calculators are fantastic.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Excellent. Well, so my final question is about whether or not you have a favorite memory of AVS.
I knew this one was coming.
Yeah, it's a pretty well-worn tradition by now.
Yeah, but I decided to fly this one off the cuff because there's so many that, I mean, to be like, oh, my favorite memory is the one time that we all sat around the main room table and played games and laughed. It'd be like, it happened like 400,000 times, almost once a day I was there. But, I mean, if I were to say my favorite memory, it might be okay. I'm gonna give you two.
Yes, please.
All right,
two is great.
My young life, my favorite memories was actually watching you and and a bunch of other now graduates sit and do improv in the theater on the stage. And however much of that I understood didn't matter. It was so funny to me and the rest of the little kids. It was like one of the best and most inspiring things at that age from like older kids. And then one of my favorite memories of being a young adult teenager, it would probably be when Ethan, who's a graduate now, Ian, also, he was in my graduating class, and I and a handful of other people decided to dig a 15-foot hole in the ground. Went through the proper channels, got everything approved, make sure we weren't digging up any gas lines or whatever. And the day we got to fill in that hole was awesome. It was so much fun. We got there was actually a running water under it from the creek, not a water line. And we started to fill it in and fill it up with water, and a bunch of people got to jump in and just have a stupidly fun time in something that I could not ever imagine we would have done.
Yeah, and very dirty, as I recall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very, very dirty. I think, no parents were happy that day.
Unless they brought extra clothes.
Yeah.
I had Ethan on the show last week, actually, and he talked about a little bit. He talked more about the mining part of it, but less about the jumping in part of it. But he did mention that, and I definitely remember pictures of that.
Yeah, that'd be the difference between Ethan and I. He remembers
the engineering.
The engineering of it. I remember all the fun parts.
Right.
Yeah.
Like jumping in the hole with all your friends.
Jumping in the hole with all my friends. Yeah.
Great.
It was a great memory.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, and especially talking about your experience, because you really have a unique perspective in that you have been to AVS and then chose to leave and then came back. Yeah. And, we have a lot of people who choose to leave and don't come back. And we have a lot of people who stay and don't choose to leave. But you kind of have, you've straddled both worlds for a while. And so it was interesting to hear how that was for you.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.
Yeah, great.
I love being here.
Good. Well, thanks.
No problem.
One of the topics Brandon touched on, though he didn't use these words, was his own entrepreneurial nature while enrolled in public high school. How many kids do you know who would stay until 5 p.m. and ask questions of the teacher until they were really sure they understood the material? That, I believe, is a direct result of a lifetime of personal responsibility and being treated as an equal. Students learn to own their education, their lives, and to do what is necessary to ensure that they're doing their best to their own satisfaction. Thanks to Brandon for sharing his story with us here on the podcast. Alpine Valley School's biggest fundraiser of the year is right around the corner, and I want to make sure I drop another plug for Colorado Gives Day. The event takes place on December 5th, and donating to the school has never been easier. Simply visit www.coloradogives.org/Alpine Valley School and pre-schedule your tax-deductible donation by clicking the green Donate button on the upper right-hand corner. Over the past 13 episodes of this podcast, you've heard from numerous individuals whose lives were changed by Alpine Valley School. You may even be one of those people. And if so, I encourage you to plan a donation of even a small amount on Colorado Gives Day. If every member of our community, every person whose lives have been touched by our school, gave only $5, we would meet our fundraising goal for the year. So please give what you can and don't worry about it being too little or too much. We appreciate it all. With your help, we'll keep Alpine Valley School's values of freedom, respect, trust, and responsibility alive for generations to come. Show notes for this episode, featuring pictures and a link to the podcast on YouTube, are available at www.alpinevalleyschool.com/podcast/EP13 for episode 13. As always, thanks for listening. I'm Missa Gallivan. This is the Alpine Valley School podcast, and we'll be back again soon with more stories of real learning for real life.